So we're here today to talk about bikes. Lots of people are asking us at the moment, what kind of bike should I buy? So I've assembled a few together today and I'm going to run you through what could be the right bike for you. There's a few things you really need to think about before you do buy a bike. Firstly, what's your budget? The budget will really dictate what kind of bike you get and particularly what kind of quality that bike is. But there's a really important question you need to think about. What kind of riding are you going to be doing? Are you thinking about riding to the park with the kids, or maybe riding with friends to have a coffee on weekends? Or is long distance riding for you? Perhaps joining a cycling club. Maybe it's off-road riding that appeals and going out and hitting some dirt roads. It doesn't matter what kind of riding you do, there's always going to be a bike that's right for you. Okay, so let's talk about this kind of bike first. I call these a cruiser. It's a very vintage style with this long sweep, really easy to step through the frame when you're getting on and off. So really great if you've got a few issues with hips and knees and find it tricky getting on and off bikes. Of course, having a basket's pretty handy, especially if you're going out to meet friends or perhaps taking the kids out. Put a stash in the basket. You can also get a rack that'll go on the back, so they're pretty convenient. But what are the cons of these kinds of bikes? Firstly, they're pretty heavy. That can be a real issue if you're thinking about riding longer distances. These are usually great for riding around the city on shorter rides. The other thing with these bikes is the saddles are usually really wide and spongy like this. So you'll find that after a few hours of sitting on this nice big spongy lounge seat of a saddle, you start to sink into it and that starts causing a bit of friction on your butt and it becomes a little bit painful. So these are maybe not the greatest bike for a longer distance, but they sure look pretty gorgeous. One of the other things to remember about these beautiful vintage style bikes is that they usually don't have too many gears. So if you're thinking about riding in a hilly area or you live in a hilly area, they may not be the best choice. However, if you haven't been riding a bike for quite a long time, the long wheelbase on these bikes can make them really stable for riders who are getting back into things. Now these two bikes are probably the most common bikes we're seeing out on the bike path at the moment. They're called flat bars, obviously because the handlebars are flat like this. They don't curl around like some of the road bikes do. Now there's a little bit of difference between these two bikes. This one is what we call a flat bar road bike, and this one is what we call a hybrid. Now the differences between them, let's have a look. You'll notice that on the front forks, this one has suspension. The flat bar road bike doesn't have that. Now the flat bar road bike is actually based on the frame of a road bike. So they're usually pretty quick, quite nimble, and they can be quite fast, particularly if you're a commuter looking to get to work quickly. They're a really good all-round bike. You can see this one's been racked up, so it's great for commuting. Now this hybrid bike, you'll see, has the suspension. You can still put racks on it, but the issue with these hybrid bikes is that the suspension makes them a little bit heavier than, say, the flat bar road bike. So if you're a rider who's thinking of doing some longer distances, perhaps the hybrid bike could get a little bit heavy over a longer distance. They're usually geared really well for hills, so you'll be able to climb up really easily, and the flat bar road bike is usually geared for speed more than anything. So it really comes down to what kind of riding you're going to be doing and what you want to use your bike for. My choice would be the flat bar road bike any day because they're lighter, generally quicker, and a fun ride. Now this little guy might not look like a bike, but it is. It's a Brompton folding bike, and of all of the folding bikes out there, definitely the Brompton would be my choice. This one is mine, and it's called Sakura because it's got this pretty cherry blossom pattern on it. Matches my top, perfect. Now, the best thing about these folding bikes is that if you live in a small apartment or maybe a small house and you don't have room to be storing bikes, this is the footprint it takes up, so super convenient. Now, they are fantastic to ride. Despite what a lot of people say about these really small wheels, they're actually really easy to ride. The good thing about the Bromptons too is that you can get different handlebars to suit the position you want to ride in. You can get them high, get them low. So it depends again on the sort of riding you're going to be doing. You can also get a whole lot of different gear choices on a Brompton as well. I think they're really great for commuting bikes. I know a lot of people do ride them long distances. I've certainly toured through Japan on my Brompton. Hard work up the hills, but I did it anyway. A lot of fun to ride. They've also got racks on them so you can take them shopping, put bags on the front, bags on the back. Really convenient little bike. So let's have a look at how we unfold it. So before I start unfolding this baby, I will qualify, I'm not an expert. Do you know, around the world, Brompton people actually have world championships on folding and unfolding these bikes, so they try and do it at the fastest possible speed. I'm not going to be able to do that, I don't think, but let's give it a shot. Easy, world record. So if you're after a little off-road action, getting a little bit dirty, these mountain bikes will be the choice. Now I've got two here and they're quite different. So obviously this one, which is a bit of a beast, this is actually an e-mountain bike. So in other words, it's pedal assisted and it's got an electric motor inside it. It's fantastic if you have a little bit of a struggle, perhaps when you're out in the dirt and getting up some of those really steep hills can be a little bit tricky. These will take you anywhere. They're super comfortable to ride and so much fun. At the other end of the spectrum, there's this hardtail mountain bike. Now this is a perfect bike if you're starting to get into mountain biking. Hardtail meaning that it's only got this front section of suspension here. Now this e-bike you'll notice has suspension at the front and we've also got suspension at the back. So we call it a soft tail. This hardtail is a perfect starting point for anyone interested in getting into mountain biking. Great choices, both bikes, but it depends on the kind of riding you want to do and also, of course, your budget. So let's talk about road bikes. All of these bikes here are road bikes. Now they might all look the same, and I know when I first got into riding, I sure thought that they were all the same kind of bike, but actually they're all made for very different things. So let's run through what is actually different about all of these bikes and what they're used for. We'll start with this one. This is a specialised Tarmad. Now this is considered to be a race geometry bike. So what does that mean? Okay, so the first thing we need to look at is the angles that are here, or through this area here, the fork and what we call a head stem. So if we think about what angle is here, it creates something that we call trail. And the trail is the angle created through down here and where the wheel touches the ground. The greater that angle, the slower the bike will be. The shorter the angle, the twitchier, we say, the bike will be. It means it's going to be a fast bike and very, very responsive. The other thing we need to look at too is the gear setup on this bike. Now on the back end of it, this cluster of gears here, you'll notice that this biggest cog at the back is actually not all that big in comparison to, say, some of the other road bikes that we've got today. The smaller this is, the faster usually the bike will be. Now obviously it's all about the ratio of these sets of cogs to our chain rings at the front. This bike is considered a very quick bike. The sitting position on this also means that you're down quite low, so it'll be a very fast and very twitchy little bike. Super fun if you're thinking about doing faster but maybe not so much longer rides. The next bike we have in the lineup is the specialised Roubaix. Now this is considered an endurance bike. So if we compare this front end with the bike we saw before, the Tarmac, the angles through here, the head stem and the fork, are going to be a little bit more relaxed. So the trail will be a little bit greater, which means that the bike will be slightly less responsive, but it means it's going to be also a little bit slower. Doesn't make any difference though if you're the kind of rider who wants to have a nice relaxing ride on a road bike. The cluster of gears on the back, you'll notice also that this biggest cog at the back is actually quite a bit bigger than what was on the Tarmac. That means that this bike has probably got a greater range of gears, which means it's easier to get up hills. It's probably built maybe not so much for speed, but for long distances. The frame itself means that you'll be sitting up a little bit more upright as well, so over a long distance it's a bit more relaxing. So if you're the kind of rider who's happy to let go of a little speed but prefers to go long distances, an endurance road bike is the perfect choice. Next up, we have a gravel road bike. Strange kind of name, but if you love the idea of being on a road bike and sitting in that position where you're down nice and low, but you also love getting off-road onto, say, some gravel roads, some fire trails out in the country, a gravel road bike is actually the perfect kind of bike for you. Now, the differences between these to the other bikes we've seen, the Tarmad and the Roubaix, is a couple of things. First of all, like the Roubaix, you'll be sitting in a pretty relaxed position, a little bit more upright. The trail or the rake on these angles in the front end is a little bit more relaxed than the Tarmac. But one of the big differences, this clearance area that you've got in the front end in the forks means that you can actually fit much chunkier and wider tyres that are suited to gravel roads. Perfect if you really want to get off-road, but not so great if you want to be riding around the city. Now, this bike has actually got slicks on it, so this has been used off on the road at the moment. You'll notice on the back end that the cluster of gears here has a really big range. So this bike will pretty much climb up a wall. It's super fantastic for going up hills. It's got a really great range on that gear selection. So if you want to be getting off-road but still riding a road bike type of bike, gravel road bike, perfect choice. The last bike in our road bike lineup is the Specialized Creo. Now, it might look like a normal road bike, but it's actually an e-bike. So before I hear anything about e-bikes being cheap bikes, they're not. E-bikes are fantastic for any rider, and they're fantastic because if it means the difference between getting on a bike or not getting on a bike, they are perfect. But the coolest thing about the e-bike road bike is that they come with an app. So you can control the amount of power that you actually use in the pedal assist. You can dial it up so you get lots of assist, or you can dial it down so that you're not getting that much assistance. Now, let's look at the frame on this. You'll notice that this is very similar to the Specialized Roubaix. So it's got quite a gentle angle through here, which means that you're sitting a little bit further upright. So good on a long ride. You'll notice also on the back end that this cog at the back is like a dinner plate. You'll be climbing up walls on this bike, but with the pedal assistance, you'll also be going up way faster. And as they say, it's you, only faster. These bikes are a brilliant ride for anybody who's actually perhaps thinking of doing some really big hills but wants a little bit of assistance to get up those hills. Super fun bike to ride, but they do come with a price. So think about it before you buy one. Am I really going to be using an e-bike? They're great for around the city, they're great for going on really long country rides with lots of hills. The battery range will give you easily 100, 120 Ks. You can also get an extra battery which sits in the back bit on here, and that'll give you probably another 50 Ks on top of that. So you can get at least maybe 200 Ks depending on where you've got that power assistance setting. So as you can see, there's a whole heap of different bikes and we've really just scratched the surface. So, best thing to do if you're thinking about getting into riding is perhaps go to your local bike shop, take a bike for a ride, give it a test and see if that bike is going to work for you. Now, these are all made for different kinds of riding, from the fast bikes to the ones that are for longer rides, or perhaps bikes that are great for touring, off-road bikes. So, depending on what kind of ride you want to do, perhaps think about your choice of what's going to work for you. If you've got any questions, feel free to contact us at Real Women. Thanks and see ya!